everybody hear me well? Perfect, okay. Thank you for coming, I appreciate it. Obviously there's some snow, so I appreciate everyone making the drive. So I would like to do a presentation on my Girl Scout Gold Award project that I did in 2022 when I graduated from high school. And I did a project on the story of the Jewish community in Islip Town. Hang on. There you go. So, a little bit about me. I'm actually now 20. Obviously, holidays are a little busy, so I didn't get to update it. But I'm 20. I graduated Islip High School in June of 2022. History and historical fashion are two things that I've had a great interest for since I was younger. And I have a lot of hobbies, including sewing, knitting, crocheting, anything art related. And that's something that I drew, just so everyone can see a little bit.
Wow.
These are some of my favorite things. I do Civil War reenacting. That's a photo of me with my Girl Scout troop, and my dog is making an appearance, and she's adorable. My other dog, which is a sausage roll, is just at the top. We love her. And my favorite TV show is Anthony, and my favorite movie is 1917, along with some other artworks that I've done. Now for the actual project, now that you know a little bit about me, why I chose this project is when you do the Girl Scout Gold Award, it's 80 hours of work, and I knew that I needed to do something that I was passionate about. So when I was starting to think of ideas for what I could do, I figured that history would be a great path for me since it's something that I already loved. Met with the town historian in Islip, and we realized that not much was uncovered about the Jewish community. So that's the path that I want to take since I'm Jewish myself, and I wanted to know a little bit more about the community as a whole since there is an influence, but where did that influence come from? So this was in 2022, Newsday picked up the article, and that's the article. It had an online thing as well, an online video as well. And then that is the cover of the booklet that I published, which is available right over there along with some business cards. Now, to do a research project like this, it's very time consuming. Obviously, 80 hours of work is the minimum amount for the Gold Award. I had to track all my hours. The end result was about 150 for this project.
Wow.
Not to mention everything that happened after the project that I do unrelated to the Gold Award. So when doing a research project like this, where does one begin? The first stop that I did was local libraries and just scanned the shelves for anything that had to do with Jewish community, Jewish history, and I found practically nothing. There was really nothing at all, besides maybe 1 or 2 books, and nothing that would actually help aid my research that much. So we decided to start from the ground up and went to Oakwood Cemetery, which has a Jewish section in the back of the cemetery, which was actually the front. And we searched the burial plot respectfully and looked along the gravestones to see if there was anything that could indicate that they were important. So, well, everyone's important, but that they did something important to the community, which is what my project was about. So there were 2 that were veterans, one said that they were a doctor, and those were the clues that we were taking. Then, number 3, books and documents including Islip Town's World War Effort series. The books that I did find at the library and in town hall, as well as online resources, were all used, which is how some of the people that we're going to talk about today were found, including the veterans. The books are available for viewing if you go into Islip Town Hall, and those are the ones that I used. It includes Bay Shore, Sayville, anything within the town of Islip. Ancestry.com is number 4. It was probably my best friend during this project. It was definitely the biggest resource that I used. And I use other genealogical websites as well, but Ancestry was great because it actually linked to those other websites that you could use, such as newspapers.com, which showed historic newspapers with an Ancestry subscription. There's also other websites that will be linked in the next slide. Then once we have all the puzzle pieces, we have to then piece together a story, which is a little bit harder than it looks. We have to make sure that the dates are right, that we're looking at the right people, that maybe, and this happens a lot, two people can have the same name and marry someone with the same name. There's someone we're looking at right now, which is a Revolutionary War soldier. He has the same name as his father, and his wife has the same name as his mother, and it's not helping us figure out who's who. So those things can happen, and we have to make sure that we're on the right track, which we use with dates and times. And then we piece together a story of how their life unfolded. And once we do that, we have a general idea based on the data that we have. Then we can conduct interviews. I was lucky enough to actually get to sit down and chat with some of the descendants of the people that we will talk about. And one of them actually grew up on a farm in central Islip, which was a Holocaust sanctuary she had told nobody about. And it's actually a place where people are very familiar with, but they didn't know what was happening behind the scenes until she was able to share. So that was an interesting thing that we will talk about as well. Hang on. Technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. So here are some of the resources that I used. Islip Town's World War I and II effort books. We also have Korean War and Vietnam War. Civil War, I'm sure at some point will come in. Seeking Sanctuary and Jews of Long Island, 1705 to 1918 from Brad Kolodny. Jewish Community of Long Island from Rhoda Miller and the Jewish Genealogical Society of Long Island were some of the books that I used most frequently. Online resources, most of my research was done online. There's a lot of things available online, a lot of good information. Ancestry.com, like I said, I used a lot. It is, unfortunately, a paid subscription, so for someone who's not willing to pay, there is more such as Family Search that is free, and it is through the University of Utah, I believe. Findagrave.com, free resource. It will actually do a GPS marker straight to the location of that grave, which is very interesting. So it has a little biography, photos, who's buried there, where they're buried, and some of the people that I researched, I actually had to look at the grave marker they had to confirm that they were Jewish because they ended up having the Star of David. So now we know for a fact that they were Jewish. New York State Historic Newspapers is also free. They have newspapers dating back, earliest ones I've used are 1850s and past. Library of Congress, everyone pretty much knows what that one is. New York Times, Newsdays, newspapers.com. If you have Ancestry.com, newspapers.com comes with that. Ancestry, like I said, is paid, but New York's historic newspapers is essentially the same as newspapers.com, but it's free, but it's only New York State. So newspapers.com is everything. Family Search and Fold 3, which is through Ancestry, they do the military records. So we have to talk a little bit about Islip Town as a whole, just to get an idea of where we're talking about. So, Islip in the early days. Islip Town was founded in 1683 by William Nicol, and the first Jew on Long Island can be traced back to Nathaniel Simpson, who lived and worked in Brookhaven back in 1753. He worked as a shoemaker. We know that Jews have lived in Islip Town since at least the end of the Civil War. On December 10th, 1897, the Bayshore United Hebrew Benevolent Cemetery Association was legally recognized within the town of Islip. A plot of land in Oakwood was bought by an organization and proper burials were held with the first year around 1900. So this is the photo of what used to be the firehouse and then was turned into the very first synagogue in Islip Town. The organization met in private until 1918 when they purchased the first synagogue in Islip Town from the Knights of Columbus, and in 1933, the Bayshore United Hebrew Benevolent Cemetery Association merged with the Bayshore Jewish Alliance, the Ladies' Aid Society, and the Junior League to become what is now known as Bayshore Jewish Center in Bayshore, New York. One of the trustees of the organization is Isaac Epstein. He was the shop owner of Epstein's department store in Islip, which was located on Main Street. And we're actually going to talk a little bit about his son. His son is Ellsworth, born on March 17th, 1897 to Isaac and Lena Epstein. He was the third of 4 children. June 5th, 1918, at 21 years old, Ellsworth would enlist in the United States Navy and would be granted the specialty of Yeoman 3rd Class. He was assigned to the steamship known as the USS Triton, who spent her life operating out of a port in Washington, D.C. Which, fun fact about the USS Triton, the one that he sailed on is the predecessor to the famously known nuclear submarine by the same name, but that was sunk by Japanese destroyers in 1943. So he's not on the nuclear submarine, he's on the steamship. On January 7th, 1919, he is released from active duty to then serve at the 5th Naval District in Norfolk, Virginia, and he would be granted an honorable discharge on June 24th, 1920. By 1930, Ellsworth is back in his hometown of Islip, where he works at his father's department store selling dry goods for minimum wage. This we know from census records. And in 1942, Ellsworth officially took over the family business. Epstein's department store was originally founded by Isaac, his father, in 1890, and served the community for over 50 years when Ellsworth took over and continued the business for another 20. And this is a photo of the Triton operating out of a naval yard in Washington. Eventually, he married a woman named Helen and had a son named Ronald. He was an active member in the community as a business owner, a court juror, participating in many organizations such as the American Legion, and served as the vice president of Islip Chamber of Commerce. On June 1st, 1965, he passed away at Southside Hospital following a brief illness. He was 68 years old and is buried in North Lindenhurst. And this is a photo of him. This is from the World War I effort book, and they have photos of practically all the veterans. Some are missing, but almost every veteran has a photo. Another World War I veteran is Sigmund Well. Born in Manhattan on February 28, 1899, to parents of German descent, he was an only child and his parents were divorced by the time he was 6 years old. August 8, 1918, at the age of 19, he enlisted in the United States Navy and held the title Apprentice Seaman of the 2nd Class during his duty at Naval Station Great Lakes in Lake County, Illinois. A fun fact about that place is over 1 million men passed through this station after the effects of Pearl Harbor, and it remains the only naval training center in Illinois and the largest in the United States. Sigmund would have been at the forefront of building and maintaining the faculties for the recruits, the buildings that are still in use today. After he was discharged from duty in July of 1919, Sigmund took up residence in Denver, Colorado, but in 1920 he is listed with the occupation of law clerk and bookkeeper of dry goods, which we also know from census records. In 1924, Sigmund moves to his permanent residence in Whipple, Arizona, and he remained a patient of the U.S. Veterans Hospital, where he eventually passed from chronic tuberculosis on December 17, 1926. His burial occurred the following day, and he's buried in the Jewish plot of Oakwood Cemetery in Islip, New York. He is buried with his uncle on his father's side, Samuel Well, who is a veteran of the Spanish-American War. He is one of the people that we found at Oakwood Cemetery when we did the walking up and down. For business owners, Morris Friedman comes to mind. Born in Poland in 1878, Morris immigrated to America and began a family with a woman named Jenny, who was of Austrian descent. They had 3 children together: Albert, born 1908, Henrietta, born 1911, and Leon, born 1914. In 1906, Morris established a bicycle shop in Bayshore, New York. His shop, Fisk's, would adapt to the changing times. In 1920, he began selling motorcycles and tires and even provided the community with a curbside gas pump. This is Fisk's at 2 different locations. The top one is the first location. The photo is taken in 1906, and the second photo on the bottom is from around 1920 to 1930. And this slide, you can see it a little bit more clear. Again, 1906, and then around 1930 on the right, and you can see the curbside gas pump in the foreground of the photo. Now, 2 of his sons also had interesting adventures in their lives. Albert Friedman is the oldest child, and he enlisted in the Army in 1943. He completed basic training at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, stationed at Camp Carlson, Colorado, where he served with Company 534 Chemical Mortar Battalion as a gun crewman in medium artillery. He was awarded the Good Conduct Medal upon discharge, and in 1947, he entered a business partnership with his father Morris and later added on his wife Regina. The agreement was made public in local newspapers, and that is a photo of Albert, also from the World War II effort book. Now, his brother, Leon, he was one of my favorites. I shouldn't say favorites. He was one I was most interested in researching because a lot of things popped up for him, including his high school yearbook. So this is him in high school. This is, I'm not exactly sure, I believe 1934 is when he graduated. And his, I don't know if you can read it too well, but his description says, smiles, rear boys, sleepyhead, grammar school blush. He did a ton. He did dramatics, rifle club, Spanish club, football squad. The man with the smile should be the nickname of this young man, for he is never known to frown. He and Duff Brewster put their heads together and sometimes in class, which resulted in hilarious, and the result is hilarious, sorry. Leon is a ready worker, and his characteristic is one of the biggest reasons for his popularity. He is remarkable as a writer of English masterpieces. The discourse on the Washington trip was quite a sensation, though nobody ever read it. Lee will find nothing but happiness for him in life. So from reading just that short bit, we get a glimpse as to the soul of the person. Not longer are they dates and times that we read in textbooks or the things that we see when we research. We're now actually seeing the human being behind the name. And Leon enlisted in 1942 to the Air Corps of the U.S. Army, where he earned the title of Staff Sergeant. He was assigned to the 338th Bomber Squadron 96 Bomber Heavy. But on April 11th, 1944, on his 11th mission as a tail gunner, his B-17 airplane was shot down and all crew was lost. Morris, his father, received the Purple Heart Air Medal in 2 oak leaf clusters for Leon's service. And that is him on the left as Staff Sergeant when he was in the military, and then his yearbook photo. And when I was lucky to be invited to the Bayshore Jewish Center long after I had completed this project, and they actually have stained glass windows lining everything. And each one is in memoriam to somebody. And the one in the row that I was sitting next to is in memoriam to him. And I didn't recognize any of the other names, but it was funny that I sat in the row of the one that I researched. Now, for the records that I keep talking about, what do they actually look like? So, on the left, this is from Ancestry.com. It's a little bit difficult to see, but it is showing us a census record. So census records will tell you the age of the person and the year. They're taken about every 10 years, although I have seen some every 5 years. It will also tell you who is living with them at the time. This is how you can make sure you have the right family, make sure the siblings are correct. And it will tell you so much that you need to know. And Ancestry will do this cool thing of it will take the actual text from the document and put it into print for you, so you don't have to zoom in and read the script. But if you would like to read the script, on the right-hand side, that is the actual document itself, written as it is. It's just scanned in and put online, and it will highlight the people you're looking for. This is something that was interesting. This is Leon's official MIA papers. So you can actually see that there's a check mark next to missing, and it's telling next of kin is his father, where they lived, everything that they need to know to alert their family that he is missing. Later it was discovered he was deceased. Oh, and one more thing about that one is it says National Jewish Welfare Board, which confirmed that they were Jewish. Fold30 is one of the websites that we used. So I took screenshots of the actual process. So when you look up Fold3, this is what you get. You can see it's Fold3 by Ancestry, and it has all the different wars from Revolutionary, Spanish American, all the way to World War II. You can research somebody just by typing in a name, and they'll come up, which is the second slide. You can see Leon Friedman. And then we found his B-17 plane, the nickname for it, and everything that they had. Sometimes you will even see photos. One of my favorite photos that I found, totally unrelated to anybody I was researching, but it was on the website, was a photo of the crew standing in front of an airplane, and they had adopted a little puppy as a mascot, like a little stray puppy, and they put the dog, they had like a little hat for the dog and a little vest for the dog, and took a photo like that. It was adorable. Those are the things that I like to see when I research. And on the last slide, it's talking about the B-17, and the B-17 will tell us who is on board. It gave us a list of names, where the plane went down, and what happened to everybody. And it says, at this one, all crew were lost. Now back to Morris after losing his youngest son. He passed away on July 31st, 1947 at the age of 69. He was a beloved member of Bayshore community for many years. He was an active member of the Sunrise Homeland Committee and the Chamber of Commerce, as well as a member of the Bayshore Jewish Center. He's buried in the Jewish section of Oakwood Cemetery, and Leon is memorialized in the Tablets of the Missing section in Cambridge American Cemetery in Cambridge, England. Oh, I have to do this for him. I don't know why. Come on, there you go. I don't know why on that slide I have to set that separately. Another veteran is Saul Bernstein, born on April 7th, 1923 to Russian parents. Saul is the youngest of 5 brothers. He graduated from Sayville High School in 1940, and at the age of 18, he enlisted in the U.S. military. He was deployed to the Pacific Theater of Operation, where he was assigned as a radio gunner on a B-17 off the coast of Africa. And one thing that was really interesting that was very impactful to me was I found an article online of an article that he wrote. So he recalled his experience in a popular Army magazine called Yank in December of 1942, which I was also able to find his yearbook, and he loved writing. That was one thing that was made very clear in his yearbook. He was in every newspaper I could find was his track achievements, because he was a track star. He did basketball, and he worked as the school newspaper, and he wrote articles. And when he went to the military, he wrote this article, which, if I can read it, I would like to share with you. Just a little quick excerpt. This is a photograph of it. And these are his words. I knew then how a duck must feel in open season, and swore that if I ever got back home to Farmingdale, Long Island, I would never go hunting again. Long Island and home. I wondered if I would ever get home again. Home never seemed farther away than it did at that moment. We were screaming down the snarling target, rolling, twisting, and turning below, trying to avoid the death that we were bringing. So he lived in Sayville, moved to Farmingdale, and this is one of the things that came up. One of 5 Bernstein brothers killed in action in the Far East, and another one, Corporal Saul Bernstein's death last week. He was killed in action on December 2nd, 1942 at 19 years old, and he was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart in January of 1943. He is memorialized with 2 other graduates of Sayville High School in a ceremony held within the auditorium of the school. There's a plaque still standing. And he's buried in the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii. And unfortunately, that article that he wrote, he never got to see published. He died 2 days before it was published. Next is the Adassi Farm. In Central Islip, there's a little dairy farm. Not little, it's 70 acres, that's pretty big. But there's a dairy farm. Little did we know, it was actually a Holocaust sanctuary. It's a 70-acre dairy farm in Central Islip, New York, and it provided eggs and dairy products to the local community for a number of years. Julius, aka Jack Adassi, was the owner and operator of the farm, and he sponsored at least 4 known survivors from Auschwitz. Sam Sitko is one of those survivors, and his experience is recounted in the documentary Paperclips, where middle school students learn what 6 million truly means. This is a quote from him directly. Future generations will have to learn about the Holocaust from their textbooks. We are the eyewitnesses that can, to a certain degree, tell you what took place. That is a quote from Paperclips itself. It is a documentary from about 2001. It's available online. They have DVDs of them if anyone's interested. But just to tell a bit of his story, he was about 12 years old when he went to Auschwitz, and he went with his mother, younger brother, and older brother. Him and his older brother went to one side, his mother and his youngest brother went to the other side, and that was the last that they saw of his mother and brother. And when he went to a guard to ask what's going on, like what's happening, again, he's 12 at the time, the guard just points to a smokestack and just walks away. And that is recounted in his story. Another thing in Central Islip is the Central Islip State Hospital. In 1899, Central Islip State Hospital is founded, and it becomes the largest psychiatric hospital in New York. Islip Town's population jumps from 11,000 from the increase in hospital patients and staff, many of whom are Jewish. At first, the hospital began with a specialized ward to treat patients with tuberculosis, and then later it became a psychiatric facility. But the state hospital is responsible for discovering the cause of syphilis, a common diagnosis amongst the patients, and therefore it led to a cure. In 1996, the facility completely closes, and the property is right next to Touro College, or the Central Islip Target. That whole area is the it's the reused buildings. So if you want to go to the hospital, go to Target and you'll be right there. Edna Gertrude Beasley is another interesting figure. Born on June 20th, 1892 in Cross Plains, Texas, she is the 9th born of 13 children. The family left to Abilene, Texas and began a new life. And her home life was not good. You will see that in a little bit, but she had a lot with sexual abuse, emotional abuse. The whole thing shaped her life. But despite all of that and the hardships she faced, she graduated from college in Texas before being accepted to the University of Chicago. She earned a master's degree in education in 1918 and worked for a local newspaper and helped organize events for the National Woman's Party. This is actually a photograph that she took. In 1920, she was traveling the world, working as a foreign correspondent for newspapers and magazines such as National Geographic, which is where that photo comes from. In 1925, she takes her experiences that she had as a kid and publishes her first book called My First 30 Years. After its publication in Paris and England, the books were censored and banned almost immediately. They had a 2-week shelf life before being banned from the stores, despite it receiving positive reviews from well-known. And I guess this is a positive review. It says, the first genuinely realistic picture of Southern poor white trash. Sure, it's positive. English authorities deported Edna from London, where she was living at the time, and on January 8th, 1928, she boarded a ship called the Republic and set sail on a transatlantic journey to America. 10 days after her arrival at New York Harbor, she disappeared without a trace. And she was just gone. This is the first bit of her book. It is the first paragraph of it, which you can see why it might have been banned in that time. 30 years ago, I lay in the womb of a woman conceived in a sexual act of rape, being carried from the prenatal period by an unwilling and rebellious mother, finally bursting from the womb only to be tormented in a family whose members I despised or pitied, and brought into association with people whom I never should have chosen. Except she disappears, but now we know where she actually went. These are records. The first one is the arriving passenger and crew lists into New York Harbor, so now we can see which ship she sailed on, when she arrived, what port she went to, passport applications, and through looking at records such as these, we discovered that she had actually disappeared to the Central Islip Psychiatric Hospital, where she remained from 1928 until her death on July 27, 1955, being deemed as insane for her writings and actions. She's buried in Central Islip State Hospital in Central Islip, right next to Touro College. And this is actually, if you would like to read the book, it's finally available. It was made available as a part of Banned Book Week in 2021 for the first time since its banning in 1925. It is now available for people to read. I've seen it at Barnes & Noble. I'm sure libraries have it. So if anyone's interested, you can read the book. And these are some reviews of people who have read the book. If she were a man, the University of Chicago graduate could have been a literary icon. She was a firecracker of a writer, a patron saint of radical truth in the eyes of her contemporaries, and the kind of woman that made the US and UK governments afraid of her putting her pen to paper. That is from the Chicago Maroon, and this one says, her only crime and indecency was speaking the truth about how her life unfolded, from Goodreads. And again, she had a tough life, but she made use of it. Larry Mendelson, if you guys have ever seen a demolition derby where all the cars go and crash against each other, or maybe You've seen those toys, and they have a little figure-8 racetrack. Both of those were his ideas. Born around 1930, in 1945, Mendelsohn bought the property that the Islip Airport once stood on. In 1947, the 0.2-mile racetrack, known as the Islip Speedway or Islip Stadium, opened to the public for the very first time. Racing would be the primary sport until 1958, when the first demolition derby ever recorded was introduced. This is a photo of a midget race at the Speedway in 1948. It's called a midget race because of the size of the cars. In 1962, ABC's Wide World of Sports featured the demolition derby on national television. Millions of people saw, and Mendelsohn quickly became known as the racing promoter, or the more popular, the Human Dynamo. On August 11th, 1962, the first race on the famous figure-8 track was held, and it was a Larry Mendelsohn invention. Islip Speedway became the smallest track ever to host NASCAR's Grand National Series in 1964, with Billy Wade being the victor. He opened a second business, a fish store in Bayshore named Tropical Wonderland, and he's also the founder and president of Spectacular Promotions, Inc. So he had a world-renowned racetrack, a fish store, and a party business, all in one. This is told by a close friend to Newsday in 1974 about the fish store. The idea came to him after he went to the dentist, saw a tank, and decided that a fish tank would fill a corner in his living room, and he wanted to do something with it. One of his fish died, and instead of giving up, he bought 20 volumes and studied tropical fish. He found a market and went for it. This is a photo in 1958, and this is him standing by one of his cars. And his obituary, a close friend said his hobby was work, and he was a perfectionist. He would wake up at 2 a.m. and write an idea down no matter how stupid. On Thursday, January 3rd, 1974, Larry Mendelsohn was found dead on his bathroom floor with his shotgun beside him. Police concluded it to be a suicide and gave no motive. His funeral was held in Bayshore on January 4th, and he was buried the same day in Mount Ariat Cemetery in Farmingdale. And here are just some photos. On the left, you can see it is the figure-8 track from above, as well as all of Islip Stadium. Then you have the demolition derby, and on the right, you can see him sitting in his office. Here are quotes from the Human Dynamo himself. Why do people come to auto races? Crashes. They come here to see cars crash. So I figured, why not have a race where all cars do is crash? The crowds are large, they sit on the edge of their seats, and why not? We sell danger. The biggest thing in America, what the entire country is based on, is the automobile. People absolutely love to see them crash. Whenever there's an accident on a corner, you have a crowd gather around. You can imagine what the crowd would be like if there were 100 cars all in one night deliberately crashing against one another. He's not wrong. So in conclusion, here's a timeline of events. 1897 is the beginning that we covered, and it goes all the way to present day. 1897, Bayshore United Hebrew Benevolent Cemetery Association is legally recognized in Islip Town. In 1918, the Bayshore Firehouse is purchased to serve as the first synagogue within the town while World War I is in full force. 1933, the organization merges with two others and created the Bayshore Jewish Center as we know it today. 1940s, World War II takes a toll on the town. The Adassi Farm helps survivors begin their new lives in America, while Islip Speedway is beginning construction. I believe that would be 1950s, it's covered by the text. Central Islip State Hospital hosts a large majority of Jewish doctors and patients, and the Brentwood Jewish Center begins its story. 1960s and 70s, B'nai Israel Reform Temple is founded in Oakdale in 1964 and is still in operation. The Brentwood Jewish Center merges with Etz Chaim from Central Islip and becomes Temple Beth Am in 1970 and served the public until 2006. And this is the number of Jews who live on Long Island today, and the story still continues. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I will take any and all questions that you may have, either now or after. And if you're interested in any other programs I do this program. I also do a murder mystery / murder trial, which is a live stage play with actors. There was a murder in Islip in 1887, where a son killed his mother because she didn't approve of the girl he loved. And I found the testimony, the original testimony. It's now a stage play, and you guys get to be the jury. And you get to decide the fate of our murderer. I also do a Captain Kidd pirate-based D&D program for children as well. And there are cards up here, as well as no more, they're all gone, but I had pamphlets for people. But thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Everything, the names that you showed up there, are they in this booklet?
Yes, every name that is up there is in that booklet.
Titles and,
Yes, as well as additional people who were not. There's only about 6 people in here. There's 9 individuals in that booklet, as well as a deeper dive into the history of the town.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just one comment. It's all great, amazing information and work.
Thank you.
About the timelines, I'm Rabbi Stillerman. I'm in the community now since 2014. We established a lot of Islip Township, so I've gotten to know a lot of history with other temples and things like that. So there's, as far as I know, and there could be more, but there's some things missing from the timeline. There's Sable Jewish Center, which probably started before 1960, but I know that their building, which we also take care of, there's now a preschool there and everything, was built in 1960 and it's still standing. Temple Beth Shalom, but Rabbi Wartenberg is a very big character in the Jewish history of the town. He passed away. Unfortunately, the operation went badly in a health problem. Then also, there's, as far as the timeline, although it's very current, is Chabad of Islip, which was established in 2014. So those are just 2, but there could have been more synagogues that were around. I know the others.
Yeah, it was Sinai Reform Temple.
Sinai Reform and some others.
Thank
Sinai
you for
Reform
letting me know.
with Bnei Israel, right?
Thank you for letting me know. There were some that, when I did the research originally, there wasn't enough information for me to include, but I would like to do more research into that so I can include it, make sure everyone's included.
I would invite you to come into, for example, the Sable Jewish Center, because I think when we rely our research on a local cemetery, especially when it comes to a Jewish cemetery, very often you find that, for example, you go to Oakwood, there aren't a lot of graves there. And some of the names just happen to be buried there. So how do you find this? Makes the job very difficult. So I would think that maybe when you go into, you see the memorial boards, I know that doesn't give you any information because it doesn't say anything else about them, but maybe names can come up there based on when things happen. So if you want to take pictures of it, you're welcome to.
Yeah, thank you for letting me know. Yes.
Where exactly was the farm in Central Islip?
So, do you know approximately where Central Islip High School is?
Yes.
It's right next door. It is across the street, right next door.
On the west across the street? Because that's on the east side of the street, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not
Okay,
sure.
but it's in that area. Well,
Yes.
it was large.
It's where the side that the cemetery is on.
Okay.
It's that side of the road,
Okay.
but it's right next door.
Mhm.
Yes.
I just want to mention, you mentioned that the war books were available for viewing at the Islip Town Hall,
Yes.
but Bayshore Historical Society also has the World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War books, so if they want to save a trip to Islip,
You guys have it right here.
We have a few for purchase in the gift shop too.
That's true, if anyone's interested.
Any other questions?
A
Yes.
question about the veteran that's buried in North Lindenhurst. Is that actually Mount Aaron Cemetery where he's buried?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that what?
The gentleman that was born in, that was buried in North Lindenhurst.
Yes.
Was that actually Mount Aaron Cemetery then?
I believe so.
This is Jewish cemetery.
That was through Find a Grave. That was the record that came up. So I don't know the history of the cemetery. I just know that that's what it's called now. It might have been called that then, but I can't say for certain. If that's what you were asking.
Yes, that's exactly.
No, it's not.
I saw another hand. Yes.
I hate to do this to you. Yeah, I know, you'll kill me later. One of the things that Molly has left out is that for the last 2 years, she has been serving without pay as an intern, a history research intern for the town of Islip. Some of the things she's turned up are out of this world, and she's not going to say it, but I will say it, because we have had this program going for that period of time, and only 2 young women have taken it, taken advantage of it. One's out in Iowa shoveling the snow right at the moment, going to college and wishing she had come back this semester. And Molly comes in, she's got her own little desk and has helped large numbers of people. And sometimes her research runs into mine, like with the murder mystery. Those of you who know Benjamin Beach, we've been doing a history of all of the town of Islip parks and buildings. I figure I'll have that done by 24/13, if I'm still here. But in joking aside, Egbert Benjamin turned out to be the person who arrested the killer and also interviewed him. He also did not own Benjamin Beach. Benjamin Beach was owned by the Clark brothers. Until after he died, it was sold to the Benjamin family. The very important part of that is that the Clark brothers that were involved were the brothers of the woman who was murdered. But other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, it was probably nothing going on. Molly, thank you very much for your efforts on behalf of the town of Islip.
Molly, that was very informative. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.